Pavel, Stefan, Wilf, Miro, thank you very much. So much more pleasant, I thought, than the way that Eddie Reader murders that particular number. Let us proceed straight away to the first of our poets for this evening, or persons delivering poetry. And it's a great pleasure for me to welcome, well, one of, when I say our own, I mean part of the organisation which is actually putting these poetry nights together. And it's a thing called Cosmopolis, and Anya and Marjana over here. And I've become involved in doing these nights as well. It's been a great pleasure to work with these two people. But first of all, we're going to welcome Anya to read something for us. And Anya Stralkowska is a person who is a cultural animator, isn't that right? Also a graphic designer, and someone who's had experience of these things in both Poland and Scotland, and is very much involved in the active community of working with migrants and doing these great shows and things with Cosmopolis. Now, the poem that she is going to deliver for you in Polish is about, I'm just giving a little pause so that you can visualize this, a battle of vegetables. Now, you can, as you listen to this, because these evenings are not about, I want to explain all about the poems, we'll sort of set them up beforehand, but to a certain degree it's about listening to the poetry of language, even if you don't understand exactly what's being said in the poems in their native languages. This may occur later on when I read one for you in English, but as you listen to this, if you want, you can imagine your favourite vegetables. So, if you'd rather imagine it's a carrot or it's a cucumber, take your pick. Ania!
Jan Brzechwa, na straganie. Na straganie w dzień targowy takie słyszy się rozmowy. Może pan się o mnie oprze, pan tak więdnie, panie koprze. Cóż się dziwić, mój szczypiorku, leżę tutaj już od wtorku. Rzecze na to kalarepka. Spójrz na rzepę, ta jest krzepka. Groch po brzuchu grzepę klepie. Jak tam, rzepo? Coraz lepiej? Dzięki, panie grochu, jakoś żyje się po trochu. Lecz Pietruszka, z tą jest gorzej. Blada, chuda, spać nie może. A to feler, westchnął seler. Burak stroni od cebuli, a cebula doń się czuli. Mój buraku, mój czerwony, czyżbyś nie chciał takiej żony? Burak tylko nos zatyka.
Niech no pani prędzej zmyka. Ja chcę żonę mieć buraczą, bo przy pani wszyscy płaczą.
A to feler, westchnął seler. Naraz słychać głos fasoli. Gdzie się pani tu gramoli? Nie bądź dla mnie taka wielka, odpowiada jej Brukselka. Widzieliście, jaka krewka? Zaperzyła się marchewka. Niech rozsądzi nas kapusta. Co? Kapusta? Głowa pusta. A kapusta rzecze smutnie. Moi drodzy, po co kłótnie? Po co wasze swary głupie? Wnet i tak zginiemy w zupie. A to feler, westchnął seler.
Ania Stralkowska, and if you would like to discuss later on which vegetables you were imagining during that. No, I don't want to know what you... No, let's leave it there. Next, I'd like to call upon a man who is a published and award-winning poet, and he's going to do some pieces for us. And I described him earlier on as a serial migrant because he is a native Scot who lived in New Zealand for many years and then came back to Scotland and has a wide range of experience of life around the world, which he brings to bear in his poetry and which he has in book form with him this evening. Please welcome Jim McGregor.
Yeah, my first one's called Observation. The name of the book's Observation, and so this is Observation number 2. Observation 1 was too long, so. A fly pays me a visit as I sit with a sandwich, and as the right hand attempts a swat, it does a loop-de-loop and lands on the left hand, then moves to the knee. I say to the insect, "Give me peace." I say it not in buzzwords, but in English with a Scottish accent, so I'm not totally sure if it understands. Peace was hung, my granny used to say, and some Glasgow murderer gets to live forever, is a well-known Fraser saying. The thing is, you always think they're going to shit on anything that's edible, and before you know it, it's Salmonella City. But maybe they're just simply starved of affection and just want some human contact, be friends and that. I don't suppose Buddhists swat flies. Might be an old friend or relation, depending on how many rungs up the karmic ladder they've climbed before their mortal coil was sprung. But what if that wee Buddhist came back as a lizard? He might have to eat his pals. So does that mean 2 rungs down the ladder to be frog spawn or amoeba? Makes you think, eh? Maybe Homo sapiens are even lower in the scheme of things. Maybe, just maybe, we're the box you stand on to get to that first rung. Bear all this in mind next time you attempt to swat a wee fly that's just crying out for some interspecies bonding. Next one's called Do-Gooders. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't piss in the kitchen sink. Don't lie, don't get high, don't lie in the sun until you fry. Don't let the waves get over your head. Don't leave wet towels at the end of the bed. Don't speak ill of the dead. Don't go out in the pouring rain. Don't think for yourself, it will hurt your brain. Don't think at all if you want to stay sane. Don't take aspirin, make friends with the pain. Don't listen to any of these. Live life to the full. Do what you please. Within reason, of course, but leaving wet towels at the end of the bed is just not worth the hassle. This is one from the Bay of Islands in New Zealand, the way up north. It's called Te Wahapu. Te Wahapu. A peach tree grows a stone's throw from a beach devoid of skimmers. What's a boy to do? All this water and no flat stones in sight. A geological explanation is given and is accepted as so. So we make similes instead as we walk over oysters welded together like misshapen skulls. Crabs scurry sideways as they do into crevices, unwilling to be similed. The day is saved when one flat stone is found and the boy manages a 5 before it sinks with a small plop, as the crabs, just like crabs, hurry back to their pools. And my last one is a love poem. It's called Anatomy of Love. My love gave me a biscuit in the shape of her heart. I gave my love a kilo of sausages in the shape of my small intestine. She accepted them in the spirit they were given and took them to her heart. I took her biscuit, gave it to my small intestine, who accepted it and passed it on. Thank you.
Our next reader is self-described as a proud Kashubian. Now, if by any chance you're not familiar with Kashubian, in the 2011 census in Poland, 106,000 people said that they spoke Kashubian as their main language at home. It is protected nationally as a heritage language in Poland. It's taught in schools there, has been heavily endorsed in the curriculum in recent years. And it is the subject of the poem by one Jan Konowski. And the poem, which I will doubtless mispronounced, is Kaszebskumewa, I think, which is about the experience of learning the first Kashubian words as a child and about the pride and enjoyment of the Kashubian language. And I'm sure we're going to enjoy it now as we welcome Danuta Meyer.
Kaszebskumewa. Znym ciebie dobrze, młeja te młewo. Twojej piersi ucił słewo, jak miece matka uciła młeja. Z twojej prosto czerpała zdroja. Ju ciebie widzą młodu i herzu, jak ciede młedrik w złotawim zbłeżu. Chłeco łedzywuś w słomiani chace, łeby tu w zgrzebni, swójści jeść siace, radace słychają, kaszepści kraje, pustkłewia, wiości, łunci i gaje. A jak so smiejeś, to so tak zdywu, jak ciede skłewrąg zaspiewo znyłu. A jak te płacieś, to so tak słychu, jak ciede w błęże wiatr gdzie zdechu. Jużem so wsłychu w te twoje żale, że insiu śpiewa nic dla mnie wcale. Chłycleno z dala młewo to ciejo, chuceśko bejko złotu sosnejo, łe ciasach dywnych, łe starim łewie, czyjeście w twoim wezyru słewie.
Now, next up we have something in Slovak. And sometimes I think that when we read things in translation, so much can be lost, because to just take a language with all the poetic music of the piece and of what the poet intended in his or her native language and move it into something else, so much is lost. I was thinking about this recently on the death of Gabriel Garcia Marquez a few days back, because I've enjoyed reading his books so much. And there's these wonderful turns of phrase in them. And then I think, well, how much more would I get from this if I could read it in Spanish? Because the wonderful turns of phrase are the interpretations of the filter that was the translator. However, the poem in Slovak that we're going to have, which is called Farewell, was translated in a very literal sense by the person who's going to read it. And she handed a copy of it to me and said, you know, this is just this is just the words. It doesn't really convey the feeling of the poem. And I looked at the lines. I said, well, some great lines in this, like a foam of bitter words from the lips. I mean, that's a great line in any language. And even the opening of it, I have a mouthful of your mouth. I have my palms full of your palms. This is dynamic stuff, even in a very kind of literal translation. However, enough of that for the moment. I think we shall welcome the person who is going to read it for us in Slovak. And she is Maria Bartasova. And she is also, I have to say before we begin, part of the Purple Club, which is always a welcome thing here.
Go Purple. Milan Rufus, Rozlúčenie. Mám ústa plné tvojich úst. Mám dlane plné tvojich dlaní. V lepke, jak vietor v roklinách, mi šumí hlas tvoj, rozvlikaný. Odpusť. Tak odpusť. Skončené. Stud ostrú čepeľ do mňa tasí. Vo chvíli toľko tušenej, že kríž môj vidieť musela si. A hoci teplom záľudným nás plachá nádej vo snách hreje. Ten, kto ti povie zabudni, je pravdivejší od nádeje. Deň, ktorý tebe do zmyslov, jak rozvíril, tak stíši boje. Z úst líže penu horkých slov a z tváre oheň slzy tvojej.
Maria Bartasova in Slovak and in purple. I even used purple ink, folks, so just in case you didn't know. I had the good pleasure of meeting a gentleman in the corridor outside before this evening's performance began, whom I had not come across before, apart from having his name on the list of people who were going to perform something this evening. But he is a man with a fascinating story. He started out life in the Gallowgate in the East End, just along the road from here, and then grew up further in Easterhouse. And in more recent times was running a second-hand shop along in Duke Street, when one day in came a Mexican artist called Carla Novi, and she encouraged him, as well as she was buying a couple of LPs or something, but she encouraged him to write a poem, which was not something that this man had done before. And he didn't really, write a poem. It was something that took rather a long time for it to happen, but this Carla Novi, this Mexican person, kept coming back to him and kept saying, are you working on this? Are you doing this? Doing something with it? She saw something there and she kept at it and kept persuading him to do this. And it really turned this man's life around from the very hard and at times dangerous existence that can happen in certain parts of Glasgow, and quite dangerous lifestyles too. He is now a published poet. He has a book called Tales from Glasgow East End. He's been involved in presenting his poetry on the BBC. He's been in Scotland on Sunday. He's been all over the place and doing stuff with this, and has really turned his life round through poetry. And I'd like to go on more about it because I was really enjoying talking to him. It's a very inspiring story. But some of his poems obviously reflect the grittiness of his life of the past and indeed in the present for many people, and are entirely relevant and valid to do so. But I think he's going to give us one of his more uplifting ones now, which is called Big Scouse Painter, from the book Tales from Glasgow East End. Please welcome John Mallon. John will be accompanied by Stepan.
From the East End, born and bred, raised in the schemes where poverty is widespread. Drinking drugs blight our lives, and the maniacs who carry knives. Just a boy from a scheme, I was even in the football team, dreaming of being a star, plenty of money and a fast car. But my life went on a slippery slope when I started smoking dope. Soon I was taking drugs every day. Heroin, cocaine and ecstasy. It wasn't long till my life was in a state, just like all the boys from the Gallowgate. Cheating and stealing was my way. It was the only way to get a decent pay. But I woke up one day to the news another pal had passed away. I knew I had to change before it was my funeral. they arrange. Cold turkey was hell. I made my home into a prison cell. Locked myself away 24/7. I'm dying, and I'm not going to heaven. I'm dying, and I'm not going to heaven. Out of the madness, I hatched a plan. I went out and bought a van. Got myself a girlfriend. My life was slowly on the mend. Soon I had a shop in Duke Street. My life's changed now. I don't need to rob or cheat. I couldn't believe my new lifestyle. I was even walking about with a smile. The wee shop was thriving. Everyone was buying. Old business was good. Making money without a hood. Black and white, every race came into my shop with a smile on their face. I was part of the community, and I felt part of society. Then the credit crunch came. Oh boy, did it bite. 6 months into it, they cut off my light. No customers came through the door. No money no more. Sitting in the shop, coughing and sneezing. No electricity, it was fucking freezing. Not enough for a cup of tea. Some businessman me. Well, I'm going on a bender. I know a money lender. I'm going to shut the shop and do a bunk, and I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to get a gram of cocaine, buy a care out and get smashed out my brain, and a tenner bag of kit. I'm going to get mad with it. I'm going to get mad with it. Back to a life of crime. And if I get caught, I'll do my time. 3 meals a day, and a colour TV, and a kettle on myself so I can make a cup of tea. I've tried my best to be good. I was just born in the wrong neighbourhood. Drugs are only 5 minutes away. In fact, up and it's close to where I stay. A customer walks in, smouldering, a small table held high. Only £5 was my quick reply. He said, it looks rather nifty. I think it's worth 50. Well, see that moment of generosity? That pulled me back from the brink of insanity. And see that act of kindness? That helped me overcome my weakness. Oh, that gent must have seen my woe and the path I was about to go. He is now a friend, and if needed, I'll be by his side. The big Scouse painter from Merseyside. Thank you.
Joe Marlin, accompanied by Stepan Zatkolak, and fantastic stuff there. Thank you very much indeed, sir. So we'll have another poem, and then we'll have another bit of music. And this time round, we call upon one of the gentlemen of the band who's going to come up and do some poetry in Polish for us. And we asked for some small descriptions of people. And I like the way that Paweł says born in Poland. He's actually given the year when he was born as well. I didn't really need to do that. Part-time artist, film, song and poetry, full-time electrical engineer, preventative and reactive repairs and maintenance. Now, I think he wanted me to read this out so that he could say, and I've got my card on it. If you get anything wrong with it, you got your cards on you, Pavel? Have you? You got your cards on you? Your business cards? I bet you have. I can see you. And I actually, this is the point in proceedings where I own up to the fact that I don't know what the poem is that Pavel's going to do for you.
Pavel is going to read some poetry of his own.
Excellent. Some poetry of his own about preventative electrical engineering at reasonable fees. Please welcome Pavel Glovienka.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, my own pieces in my own language, Polish language. So if we start at engineering ideas, I will read something about industrial vision. It's called industrial, but in Polish, me industrium. W mym industrialnym gnieździe, gdzie gniazdko znaczy wszystko, w splecionych kablach mej macierzy, 6 rano, budzik warczy chamsko. W suficie światło, woda ciepła w kranie, lecz co, gdy zwarcie, jeden błąd technika, pęknięta rura, zacięta winda, me industrium w klatkę mnie zamyka. Jak ryba w akwarium jestem wolny aż do granic i choćbym skonał to za nic, nie oddam przyjemności elektrowatów. Okay. Oświata, education. Wszystko dobre, co się dobrze kończy. Lecz gdy się tak stanie, że koniec, jak zziajany pies gończy, w pysko oświaty trzyma kaganek. Koniec zazwyczaj znaczy początek. Wiesz już dobrze, o czym mówię. Para z herbaty myślisz wrzątek, gdy się kochasz, pocałunków nie czujesz. Tak wszystko, co już jest, już było, a co ma być, już jest. I tak, żeby lepiej się żyło, życiu robię test. Jak koniec strony otwiera rozdziały, a w pociągu jak życia przedzialej, siedzisz i myślisz otwarcie, co jutro się stanie. I ostatni, the last is a pen. Takie pióro nie może się gubić. Głowa, ręce chcą się trudzić, a czy mogą? Tak jak nogą dać zadanie, idź naprzód, biegnij, powstań. Aby z pióra, jakby z kuli z historii powstań, uczę, że słowa te umierają krótko. Thank you.
When we had the first of these multilingual poetry incarnations here in Sharmanka, there had been a couple of previous things, one of which took place in Govanhill Baths and one of which took place in Marjana's flat last year. But the first of these happened last December, and Tatiana Jakubskaya of the Sharmanka Gallery was especially enthusiastic about the gathering of voices from around the world happening in this space. It was something that appealed to her a great deal, and she said, we've got to do this again. This is really good. This is really strong. We should do this again. And it's most unfortunate that as it comes round and we do it tonight, Tatiana and Eduard Bersudsky, the creator of all the marvellous mechanical sculptures that you see around you, can't be with us. And I'm sure they would be enjoying the evening immensely if they were here. And I'm very glad to have Robin Mitchell with us tonight, who's been looking after the gallery and is a resolute supporter of Sharmanka. So I think a little round of applause for Robin. Thank you. And next we welcome one of our, well, not strolling players because they're sitting down, but one of our players on guitar, Stepan Zatkulak, who's from the Czech Republic and living happily here in Glasgow, and he's going to do something from the decadence movement of the Czech Republic. The poem is called They All Lied to Me. Stepan.
Hi. This guy actually died 1914, so it's 100 years of anniversary to remember him. So please, 3 seconds of silence. Thank you very much. Yeah. Všichni mi lhali. Všichni mi lhali. Blázna si se mě dělali. Přede mnou citem se rozplývali, za zády se mi vysmáli. Žurnály, básníci, učenci lhali, po léta za nos mě vodíce. Muži mi lhali, i ženy mi lhali. Ženy, ty lhali mi nejvíce. Srdce mé stále po lásce prahne, nikomu však již nevěřím. Když někdo ruce své stáhne, ustoupím bojácně ke dveřím. Řekl bych, že všechno je ztraceno v žití. Žití je však tak záhadné. Šťastný jsem, mohu-li své pivo píti, hořící tabák neschladne. Thanks.
I'm going to introduce Susana Garcia, who is from Spain and who's been living in Glasgow for 2.5 years. And she's going to read a poem from her childhood, and it is about a cock who was waking up the whole village, so people didn't even need alarm clocks. You're welcome here. Susana Garcia.
Kikiriki, estoy aquí, decía el gallo colibrí. El gallo colibrí era pelirrojo y era su traje de hermoso plumaje. Kikiriki, levántate, campesino, que ya está el sol de camino. Kikiriki, levántate, labrador, despierta con alegría, que viene el día. Kikiriki, niños del pueblo, despertad con el ole, que os esperan en el cole. El pueblo no necesita reloj, le vale el gallo despertador.
I'm very much looking forward to the performance of our next poetry reader, who is a very dear friend and someone without whom, and her friend Anya over there this evening, wouldn't really have got off the ground. And so it is an immense pleasure, as always, to introduce Marjana Antoniak.
I'm going to read a poem of my favorite poet, Julian Tuwim. It's called Lokomotywa. Stoi na stacji lokomotywa, ciężka, ogromna i pot z niej spływa. Tłusta oliwa stoi i sapie, dyszy i dmucha. Żar z rozgrzanego jej brzucha bucha. Buch, jak gorąco. Jak gorąco. Puf, jak gorąco. Jak gorąco. Już ledwo sapie, już ledwo zipie, a jeszcze palacz węgiel w nią sypie. Wagony do niej podoczepiali, wielkie i ciężkie, z żelaza, stali. I pełno ludzi w każdym wagonie, a w jednym krowy, a w drugim konie, a w trzecim siedzą same grubasy. Siedzą i jedzą tłuste kiełbasy, a czwarty wagon pełen bananów, a w piątym stoi 6 fortepianów, w szóstym armata, o jaka wielka, pod każdym kołem żelazna belka. W 7 dębowe stoły i szafy, w 8 słoń, niedźwiedź i 2 żyrafy, w 9 same tuczone świnie, w 10 kufry, paki i skrzynie, a tych wagonów jest ze 40. Sam nie wiem, co się w nich jeszcze mieści. Lecz choćby przyszło 1000 atletów i każdy zjadłby 1000 kotletów i każdy nie wiem jak się natężał, to nie udźwignął. Taki to ciężar. Nagle gwizd, nagle świst, para buch, koła w ruch. Najpierw powoli, jak żółw ociężale ruszyła maszyna po szynach, ospale szarpnęła wagony i ciągnie z mozołem i kręci się koło za kołem i biegu przyspiesza i gna coraz prędzej i dudni i stuka łomoce i pędzi, a dokąd, na wprost, po torze, przez most, przez góry, przez tunel, przez pola, przez las i spieszy się dążyć na czas, o tak to turkoce i puka i stuka, to tak to tak to. Well, in exchange, I'm going to introduce John Kavanagh, who is a great friend of mine. John is a great voice, great radio lover, and a great radio presenter. And he loves adventure, and he recently went to Poland. And I found out that he is also a great vodka lover there. John Kavanagh.
Yeah, there were certain phrases that I learnt when I was in Poland. One of the important ones was nie jestem głodny, which means I'm not hungry, which is an important phrase to learn when you've sat and eaten, and then your very generous host or hostess says, "Why is he not eating?"
I should have taught him, I'm not thirsty.
I'm going to round off the poetry this evening, and what a wonderful gathering it's been. We shall be doing this again in months ahead here in Sharmanka. But I'm going to round off with something which involves audience participation. It's by a wonderful nonsense poet called Eduard Lear. And something that seems to tie Eduard Lear's work, or quite a body of Eduard Lear's work together, is that it's about diverse migrants going on adventures. You know, the owl and the pussycat. An owl and a pussycat going off on an adventure in a boat. You know, this is the thing. They go on adventures and they are migrants and they go off to live in other places and sometimes they change the locale. So it seems, although he's quintessentially English, it seems really appropriate that we have Eduard Lear in something that's a celebration of our rich migrant culture here in Scotland, as this evening has been and as these evenings will continue to be. This is the Jumblies, and we will appreciate your joining in. They went to sea in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they went to sea, in spite of all their friends could say, on a winter's morn, on a stormy day, in a sieve they went to sea. And when the sieve turned round and everyone cried, "You'll all be drowned," they called aloud, "Our sieve ain't big, but we don't care a button, we don't care a fig. In a sieve we'll go to sea." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed away in a sieve, they did, in a sieve they sailed so fast. with only a beautiful pea-green veil tied with a ribbon by way of sail to a small tobacco pipe mast. And everyone said who saw them go, "Oh, won't they be soon upset, you know? For the sky is dark and the voyage is long, and happen what may, it's extremely wrong in a sieve to sail so fast." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. The water it soon came in, it did. The water it soon came in. So to keep them dry, they wrapped their feet in a pinky paper all folded neat, and they fastened it down with a pin. And they passed the night in a crockery jar, and each of them said, "How wise we are! Though the sky be dark and the voyage be long, yet we can never think we were rash or wrong, while round in our sieve we spin." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And all night long they sailed away, and when the sun went down, they whistled and warbled a moony song to the echoing sound of a coppery gong in the shade of the mountains brown. "Oh, Timballo, how happy we are, when we live in a sieve and a crockery jar, and all night long in the moonlight pale we sail away with a pea-green sail in the shade of the mountains brown." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed to the western sea, they did, to a land all covered with trees, and they bought an owl and a useful cart, and a pound of rice and a cranberry tart and a hive of silvery bees, and they bought a pig and some green jackdaws, and a lovely monkey with lollipop paws, and 40 bottles of rainbow ree, and no end of Stilton cheese. Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And in 20 years, they all came back, in 20 years or more. And everyone said, "How tall they've grown, for they've been to the lakes and the Torrible zone and the hills of the Chankly Bore." And they drank their health and gave them a feast of dumplings made of beautiful yeast. And everyone said, "If we only live, we too will go to sea in a sieve, to the hills of the Chankly Bore." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. Thank you.